took on at the time. These were fights that we championed when we were in school. We were on the picket lines, we carried placards, we braved bullets for the people then. And I can assure you that by the grace of God, if we get to the Senate, we will also be championing the issues of the Gbagi, the Koro, the Bassa, and many other of the indigenous tribes in the FCT. I think for many people who come to Abuja, the Abuja that they see, they get to the airport, they get to the end of Airport Road and turn left, and they see a fantastic Abuja. They see an Abuja that is a city that rivals many cities in many parts of the world. But the reality is that Abuja is not the fine structures that we see in Maitama. It is not the fine structures we see in Kusei. It's not the fine structures that we see in Garki. To see the real Abuja, we must go to places like Pape, a community of about 300,000 people with only one primary school. We must go to places like Yanya. We must go to places like Pukwa. We must go to places like Biaji. We must go to places like Biaji across, where you cannot drive there with a car. The only way you can get there is on a motorbike, an Okada as we call it. And during the rainy season, these are places that are totally impassable. One of the things that we're committed to doing is in ensuring that the rest of the 6 council areas in Abuja are brought up to the same level of infrastructural development as Amak. So Abuja has 6 council areas, and I'll name them. There's Amak, which is the center which most people who come to Abuja know. There's Buhari, and then there are the 4 area councils in Abuja South, and those are Abaji, Kwali, Kuje, and Gwagwalada. And one of the things we are definitely committed to, that I am committed to, if by God's grace I get elected to the Senate, is in ensuring that there's going to be parity in development across all the council areas, in the areas of healthcare, in the areas of infrastructure, in the areas of energy, in the areas of opportunity for our youth. And in every particular area of every human development index you can that one can imagine is important to societies, we will ensure that there is parity across the board. And these are things that, as a member of the National Assembly, I definitely am committed to pushing forward on. I think it is clear that corruption is probably the single most important problem that faces us as a nation. Many of the challenges we face, whether it's issues to do with power, whether it's issues to do with infrastructure, whether it's issues to do with healthcare, many of these things are problems that have resulted because of that monster called corruption. Now, in order for corruption to be addressed, I think one of the fundamental issues that we have as a country is that we focus mostly only on the symptoms of corruption and we don't go to the roots of corruption. For example, how would we not expect a police officer to want to take a bribe when we don't pay him sufficiently? Why would we expect that a teacher would give his or her best when we're only paying that teacher 30 to 40,000 naira per month as a salary? Why would we not expect a director in the Ministry of Education who is controlling hundreds of millions of naira in the budget, and yet we are paying that person only 150,000 naira per month? We fool ourselves if we don't address the fundamental causes of corruption. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it has to do with the issue of enforcement. One of the tragedies of our nation is that we build institutions around people. We don't have strong institutions, we have strong persons. So for example, we've had the EFCC under 2 different leaders. And I think many Nigerians would agree that we've had 2 very different EFCCs, even though the enabling laws have not changed. Nothing has changed in how the EFCC was structured from a legislative perspective. The same thing with institutions like NAFDAC. I'm not saying the current person who is there is not effective, but many Nigerians saw a more visible NAFDAC under Dora Akunyili than they are seeing now. So the point that I'm making is this, that we should also look at the laws that we have. We should make sure that those laws are people-proof, that regardless of who is in an office, we must construct policy in a manner that ensures that every person occupying that seat is able to effectively discharge their duties in a manner that ensures that the goals that we set up those laws for are achieved. I think the other aspect that we should also not forget has to do with the issue of political interference. And again, that has to do with how these legislations are structured in the first place. We know that oftentimes, whether or not corruption drives or anti-corruption drives are effective, have a lot to do with the political will of the people who sit in executive office. And we need to find a way of ensuring that Nigeria's dependency on who is in office as a gauge or as a determinant of how effective our fight against corruption is, there must be a disentanglement. And those are some of the things that we need to wrap our minds around as we struggle legislatively to find ways of addressing the issue of corruption. Traditionally, Nigerians have not taken legislative elections as seriously as we take executive elections. And so what the numbers have told us over the years is that while close to 60 to 70% of the electorate, of the registered electorate, will actually come out to vote for presidential elections, usually somewhere between only 20 to 30% would vote in legislative elections. But what we saw on Saturday, April 2nd, was a very different, potentially different type of outcome. We saw Nigerians, young, old Nigerians, out in their droves, wanting to participate in the process. And what I hope for, and what I'm charging Nigerians to do, is to ensure that the disappointment of April 2nd do not translate into low turnout on April 9th. In fact, if I recall the enthusiasm with which people registered, and I look at the enthusiasm with which people came out on April 2nd, my hope and my wish is that that enthusiasm also carries through into April 9th. The legislative elections are crucial. There is no way a president can deliver on his or her agenda without a strong legislative body. We know that regardless of what the president intends to do, if the National Assembly is not sensitive to the agenda of that president, and the National Assembly does not support the agenda of that president effectively can't do anything. I mean, we recall that only a few months